Minnesota has millions of families, each with distinct stories.
We've invited 3 cooks to share their cultural culinary journeys with us.
From family recipes to brand new creations.
The cooks will then show off their skills, flavors, and ingenuity, competing for the crown to be named the winner.
The food is delicious, and there's room for everyone at our table. Welcome to the Great Minnesota Recipe. Tonight on the Great Minnesota Recipe.
When I decided to pick Minnesota to move, honestly, it was the weather. I know. Here comes the flavor bomb here. The kitchen is my playground. I love playing in the kitchen. For me, it's the best place in the house. This is my way to connect to my history, my mom, memories, my grandma. It's all based on cooking. So we're gonna sit down and eat. That's kind of the Malaysian thing too. It's like you'll never leave on an empty stomach. You know, we will always feed you.
Funding for the Great Minnesota Recipe is provided in part by Doherty Appliance Sales and Service, Goat Hill Marketplace, the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Santhi Muniandy-Deisch. I was born and raised in Malaysia. Currently, I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work as a consumer appeals advisor by day, but cooking is my passion. I've been cooking for a long time, probably since I was 4 years old. My very first memory was being in the kitchen with my mom. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she is an amazing, amazing chef.
Welcome, Santhi.
Hi, Santhi.
Hi.
We're so excited to get to know you more. And okay, Malaysia, I want to know, tell me about your childhood and how that influenced your cooking.
Oh my gosh, Malaysia is an amazing place to grow up as a kid. It's a melting pot. Now, it started as a spice trade back in the day. And so all these, it's strategically located. It's very central in Southeast Asia. So we had, I say we had, but there are like merchants, you know, from India, from China, from Portuguese. All these merchants just met in Malaysia and started trading spice. So all these influences from all these countries kind of stayed, and we became just this food haven. And growing up, I was exposed to all these beautiful, bold flavors. I kind of took it for granted as a kid, I guess, because just spoiled with all these flavors. My mom was an amazing cook. So was my grandma. And that's kind of how my love of food started. I mean, how can you not? You know, you're born and raised in a beautiful country with, you know, just different flavors from different ethnicities. So.
Santhi, what are we making today?
And how can we help?
Oh, ladies, today we're gonna make one of my favorites. This is my mom's recipe. It's Mama's chicken sambal. One of my favorite dishes growing up, also a family favorite. So that's what we're gonna do today. And for you, my sous chefs, you guys get the fun job. You guys get to peel the onions, the garlic, the ginger.
What do you need first?
Let's get the roasting started so we can do the shallots, garlic, ginger, all right? And
I'll do the ginger.
I'll do the shallots.
I'm gonna cut up this chicken. And the chicken, together with the potatoes, we are going to marinate it. Now, this is something you can do ahead of time with the marination. The longer it marinates, the better.
And do you normally do this with chicken thigh, chicken breast?
I like using chicken thighs, personally. It just holds the flavor. The breast meat tends to dry out. Growing up, my mom used the whole chicken. So there was no such thing as boneless at our house growing up, you know. And honestly, if you can, that's the best way because the bones really do add a lot of flavor.
Yeah.
Yes. And we use every part of the chicken. I mean, it's like you don't waste, and that's one of the Malaysian mentality. We use every part of everything. So chicken's cut up, and then what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna marinate this with turmeric and chili powder. Now there's gonna be chili in our sambal paste component as well, so
you don't want to go too crazy with
you
the
don't
chili.
want to go too crazy. Like I said, you know, you can always add flavors.
Yep.
You can extract it. And then once, Shannon, once you peel the potatoes and dice it up, we can throw that in here as well.
Okay.
Now I've got this pan heating up. There's no oil in it. What we're doing for this first part, we just want to roast our aromatics. Just gonna roast it until it has that nice char to it. And then we're gonna make the sambal paste from this.
Oh, you're making your
with the
sambal
tomatoes.
paste from scratch. Awesome. I love that.
Yes. No cheating here. At
It
least
smells
not today.
amazing already. It smells so good. The minute you took out those spices.
Right. I'm gonna toss in the shallots.
Are you using all the garlic, Santi?
Let's do about 4. Ginger. I'm gonna toss this around just so it has a char on each side.
Is there a minimum time you need that to kind of be marinated?
To marinate?
Yeah.
The longer you marinate, the better. Obviously, you can even do this overnight. Just let it sit and let's marinate.
Do you always use red onions or do you switch it up sometimes?
I like using a combination of both. I do like using red onions when it comes to cooking Malaysian dishes. Yeah.
Do you have people help you in the kitchen, Santi?
No, unfortunately. You know, when my boys were younger, they're teenagers now, so I think they lost interest. But when they were young, they were always helping in the kitchen. In fact, I used to sit them on the counter. They'd watch me, you know, chop things up, and then they would help me, you know, stir. And the very first thing I taught them is the word hot, right? You gotta, if you're gonna be in the kitchen, you gotta respect the heat, respect the sharp tools around you. You're playing, but at the same time, you know, don't mess around. I started the Kitchen Fairy. It's a catering company, and kind of a whimsical name, the Kitchen Fairy, because, you know, like I said, the kitchen is my playground, and I do make magic happen. Instead of fairy dust, I have spice dust. Throw it in my food, sprinkle here, sprinkle there, and also love. It kind of came about when I lost both my parents. I lost my dad first, which I couldn't make it home for to see him, to say goodbye. I almost made it. I was, you know, waiting for my transit flight, and then I got the call. It's like the worst thing to do, you know, to be at a place in an airport with nobody, and then you get the call, you know, that Dad passed away. It was hard. But at the same time, I got to spend time with Mom and cook with her, you know. But who knew that was gonna be the last time, because I lost Mom 5 months later. And it's kind of an irony because my first memory of her was, you know, being in the kitchen, cooking with her, right? And then my last memory of her was being in the kitchen, cooking with her as well, and still learning. And so that was hard. At one point, I kind of just didn't want to cook. I kind of almost gave up, you know, because it was hard. Because every time I'm in that kitchen, the memories come, you know. And I hated it. I hated crying all the time. I hated cooking. But then one day I thought, no, this is not what mom and dad want. I'm like, you know what? No, I want to turn this into something positive. And that's kind of how I started the Kitchen Fairy. You know, I love cooking. I love sharing my meals with everyone. And I want other people to cook and feel that same way, you know, because cooking is therapy for me. Voila. This part, the sambal part, the secret weapon is belacan. Now, would you like to smell this fabulous aroma?
We've been warned.
It's very pungent. If you're not used to, if you're not used to grow with those smell and flavors growing up.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong.
Yeah, definite fit. Yeah.
No, it has flavor.
Yes, it's packed. It's umami. A little goes a long way. All you need is like half an inch. Usually when I'm making sambal, I'm doing this outside. You know, my neighbors smell something funky. I'm like, hey, I don't know. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, I don't know.
Sharing the love.
Yes, exactly. But if you can't find belacan and you don't really want to experiment with it, you can always replace it with the next best thing, fish sauce, right? Okay. So I'm actually gonna do fish sauce, but I've also made my homemade sambal that I use belacan with, so we can use a little bit of both here today. So after you're done roasting, I'm gonna do about a teaspoon of fish sauce. That should do the trick. So to this, we're gonna add dried pepper, but how about 1.5? My mom would do probably 10 of those fresh chili. All right, all this goodness goes in here.
Okay, so you have the shallots, the peppers,
the ginger.
Okay.
And then the fish,
tomatoes. Yep.
Belacan or fish sauce.
It's pretty.
Isn't that a beautiful color?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All that.
Yeah.
Smells delicious. This is done. We're gonna just start frying our chicken. This is probably the most time-consuming part. Okay. And you want to make sure to do it in small batches so you don't overcrowd the pan and you're frying chicken.
So would you say this was a childhood staple in your house?
It is. My mom would usually, this is a weekend Saturday afternoon lunch because it takes a while to make it. There's different components to it. So it's usually a very special like lunch, Saturday afternoon lunch to look forward to. This is my pantry. This is my Malaysian pantry. All my Malaysian spices. I've got cardamom in here. And then I've got my star anise in here. This is turmeric. Always have turmeric. Never run out of that. This is chili powder, Indian chili powder, which is hot than your regular chili powder. Got tamarind. Here is this, I labeled this mom's rasam powder. This is her homemade rasam powder that she made the last time I saw her. And so this is very special. So I'm clearly I'm probably gonna keep this for a long, long time and use it, you know, very sparingly. So she's here with me. This is my way to connect to my history, my mom, memories of my grandma. It's all based on cooking because my grandma and I, we had a language barrier. My grandma spoke Tamil, which I was really awful at. She would speak some Malay, so our main communication was through cooking.
Sure.
All right, so this is nice and brown. So as you can see, the turmeric gives it that nice
Yeah, it's beautiful.
golden color.
Yeah, that
Golden
looks
color.
really good.
This is where you would come running. You'd smell the frying and the.
Yeah.
This is where.
Exactly. And I love the stirring part. Like, that was my job. Mom would cut, and I'd be the one stirring the pot. Perfect, and then our next.
I like how you're really explaining how to not do it all at once, right? The batches, to really take care and let the chicken cook very evenly.
Yes. So if you crowd the pot, then what happens is you're steaming the chicken. And so you're not gonna get that crunch.
That would be tempting to put it all in the pan
Yes.
at one time.
It didn't seem like a lot when you were preparing it.
Right? This is where patience come in handy. This is where you channel Bob Ross and be calm. Like, don't rush. Can't rush perfection.
So you grew up in Malaysia, but you're here in Minnesota now. Can you talk about that journey from both your personal journey and your culinary journey?
When I decided to pick Minnesota to move, it was, honestly, it was the weather. I know. I was so tired of the hot, humid, tropical weather all year round in Malaysia. I wanted snow. I wanted 4 seasons. I wanted to experience it. So when I was doing my electives, we had a sister school connecting with St. Cloud State. And so I thought, oh, and I did my research. I'm like, oh, Minnesota, they have winter. How awesome.
Yeah, we do.
So my parents said, okay, go to Minnesota. And that's what I did. Packed my bags, didn't know anybody here. 21 years old. Okay, I was young. I wanted to explore the world. I never left Malaysia up to that point. Moved to January 21st, 2000. It was amazing. It was snowing. And then maybe 3 days later, I'm like, okay, I'm done. It's like, all right, when's the next season coming? And, of course, 6 months later. And 20-something years later, here I am.
Was it hard to find ingredients that you were used to cooking with?
Actually, that's kind of what got me going into cooking. When I was in Malaysia, it was really cheap. You had street food, hawker food stalls, and you didn't really need to cook. When I moved to Minnesota, it was the opposite, because there was nothing. In St. Cloud, you had maybe an Asian store. That's when I started really being creative. I'd call my mom. There wasn't, smartphone at that point. I had to use a phone card. So you dial my mom, and then she would kind of walk me through, okay, this is how you make your curry. You need all the, she'd list like all this ingredient. You need mustard seed, you need cinnamon stick, you need curry leaf. I'm like, Mom, I don't have all that. There was one point where when I went home to visit, my suitcase would be filled with spices. I would bring all my spices from home to Minnesota. As I moved to Minneapolis, and through the years, you can find a lot of ingredients now these days, so that helps.
It's good to know that just a little bit of that blanchan really makes the flavor.
Makes a big
so
difference,
important.
doesn't it? Yes.
It's worth the smell, I think.
All right,
Oh,
here
smells
comes
delicious.
the flavor bomb here.
Yeah, it smells so incredible.
And then, so from here, we're gonna add the chicken potatoes. So now everything goes in.
And all of that flavor.
Yes. At this point, you just wanna put it Just get all the ingredients all nicely coated with that sambal. And this is where you have the option. You can just let it cook for about 25-30 minutes and leave it dry, or you add water and just let it simmer. The longer it simmers, the better. My kids, they like burgers, sliders, you know, a little bit more American food that way. But most of the time at home, it's Malaysian food. And the reason why I cook more Malaysian at home is because it teaches them that side of their culture, you know, where I grew up. It teaches, food is like a tool to teach them about the Malaysian culture, right? So if they're eating, you know, like a fritter, I'd say, oh, you know, your grandma used to make this and sell it at the market, you know, and it's kind of like things that they don't think about, like, what, you know, like grandma used to sell this at the market, what? So it's fun. Food is like a big deal at home. So we've got water, coconut milk, turmeric to the flour, and just a pinch of salt to taste. And then we are gonna whisk this in, blend it all together. And the consistency of this crepe, we want it slightly more liquid than a pancake batter.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna add a little bit more turmeric to this. Just, there you go. I want it nice and yellow. This batter is gonna go into our roti jala dispenser. I use a cast iron pan, but any flat pan works. If you're using a regular pan, just gonna spray some oil so it doesn't stick. And then once this pan is hot, you're gonna just go in a circle. Once it cooks, you just want to fold it. So this is supposed to imitate a fishing net. So going back to the history of Malaysia, because we're surrounded by the sea, we had fishing villages. The women would get inspired by their husbands, the fishermen. Why don't we make a crepe that looks like a fishing net? So hence, you get the roti jala. I grew up kind of like an only child because my brothers were older than me, so I love having family, and and my husband does too. You know, my husband grew up in a big family. He had like 7 siblings, so it's, for me, that's the whole purpose of having a home, you know, just having people over, sharing meals, eating together. I mean, just filling the home with laughter and, you know, being loud. I mean, I love that. So that's why we always have family over. That's kind of the Malaysian thing too. It's like people just show up anytime. That's kind of how my parents were. You'll never leave on an empty stomach. You know, we will always feed you. Even if you don't want to. Nope, we will still feed you. There you go. Well, thanks for coming, you guys.
Hey, thanks for inviting us. This is awesome.
Wow, Santhi, thank you for sharing this like family dish.
Yes, yes.
Beautiful.
Put some chicken sambal here. All right, ladies, here comes the best part, taste testing time.
I'm very excited.
I am too.
I do want to try to eat it with my hands, but do you have any recommendations?
Just use the crepe and scoop it up.
Okay, I'm gonna try it. Looks beautiful. There's heat, Santhi, but it's not uncomfortable.
A little in the background.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's coming through though, not just in the background. It's really good though. It's really savory.
I wanted to taste the chicken before I tasted the whole thing together. Just to see how that marinade tastes, and yeah, it's there.
The roti is lighter than I thought. It's very fluffy, but you know, when we pan fried it, I thought it would be like crispy. Do some people make it really crispy at times, or is it meant to be more fluffy?
Meant to be a little bit more fluffy.
Okay, yeah, it is.
It feels like a soft, like eggs almost, right? Like scrambled eggs in that consistency.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is absolutely delicious.
It's wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Santhi.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
ladies.
Next time on The Great Minnesota Recipe.
Growing up, I have a great family. On my dad's side, we're Lebanese and native, and on my mom's side, we're German. I've been on a kind of a mission to reclaim our culture and relearn our ways.
So this is a very culturally thought out dish. So that's what it's all about, you know, bringing more knowledge, education to our communities so they can better nourish themselves and be healthy, live happy and good lives.
Funding for The Great Minnesota Recipe is provided in part by Doherty Appliance Sales and Service, Goat Hill Marketplace, the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and viewers like you. Thank you.